Welcome to the Storied Outdoors. My name is Brad Hill, and I'm joined by my good friend and co-host Brian Gill, and we're joined today by head adventurer and founder of Pakmule Cargo Carriers, Kansas Sartin. When he was younger, packing, loading, and managing gear was the worst part of the trip. I can identify with that. That constantly took away from the experience, from how do I, fit all this stuff to where's my camera. It was something constantly he was fighting and always looking to improve. So he tried plastic boxes, done that. Numerous models of hitch racks, seen those dragging the ground before, but nothing working intuitively, and certainly none of it was easy or safe. Man, all of that, I was like, yes, correct. 2012, the original Pakmule was inspired by rigging on coastal fishing boats. With curved edges, it was easy to be around, and lightweight aluminum construction meant it could haul a ton of gear. They put the Pakmule through its paces, everywhere from South Texas dove hunts to family road trips to Colorado and Montana. From there, the legend has grown, and now there's an entire line of Pakmule carriers and accessories. You guys say something that really resonated with me. Our purpose is to design gear that continues to help people get away from it all and to focus on what matters most. Good times with friends and family, and pursuing those hobbies that really drive and rejuvenate you, to create memories that last well beyond the weekend, and a love of outside that will inspire you to conserve it for the future generations. Kansas, thanks so much for joining us today and sharing your story with us.
Yeah. Excited to be here, guys. And yeah, really, I mean, all those points are true. And right before we started recording, I was telling you about living in Houston, and that's where my career and was, and where we were raising a family. And my mom lived with us, and we were taking care of her for 10 years. And it was the escape. Houston's a great town, tons of great people, a lot of, great things to do city life wise. And the development has been amazing to watch. I was in construction, so that was super fun. But the hardest part was making that escape on the weekend, and concrete jungle. And it was, at least an hour and a half before you were finally out of development into a place where you could sort of exhale and feel like, all right, now the trip has begun, and so the end of a work week comes, and you guys, I'm sure, can relate. You've been going all day, all week. You've hardly been able to think about all the stuff you need to do to get ready. You're exhausted. You come home Friday, you're like trying to get all your stuff in and either load up with your buddies to go somewhere or load up with your family to go somewhere, and get all those things together. And you're like, man, I've done this before. I know how the show goes. It's a pain. It's exhausting. Somebody's going to come out after I've packed with an extra bag or two and be like, oh, I almost forgot this. And you're like, I got no space for it now. Like, Tetris in the back is finished. And then, like, what is it that I need, and how do I get it all in here? And then when I get to my destination, or en route to my destination, where's that thing that I threw back there? Like you mentioned the camera, and that was a big one, because I'd have, especially on hunting trips, I'd have my kennel on one side of my Tahoe, and then I'd have the cooler sitting next to it, and a bag, like my bag of clothes and stuff on top of that. And then all the smaller things ended up being behind the cooler on the far side, like camera and shotgun shells and fishing lures and all the miscellaneous stuff. And so constantly I was, crawling in there like a little burrow mole, trying to get into the back and dig through the different things. Like, where is that thing? And it's like, God, this is so ridiculous. And so, yeah, that was the inspiration. It's like, man, how do I make this easier? Our product is not, I tell people, like, we don't make a fun product, or we don't make a fly rod or a surfboard or something that really is fun, but we make a way to haul that fun and get you out into that place where you're inspired to be, and the place that rejuvenates you and gets you fueled up for the next work week that you've got. I've got this cutout of an old ad from a magazine that I keep on my desk, and it's a cabin in the woods with a little smoke, a bunch of forests. It says you weren't born to just pay bills and die.
Mm-hmm.
We have to
Oh
remind
man.
ourselves of that, because you get into it and you're like, man, I got to make that dollar. I got to pay that bill. I got a kid about to go to college. I'm like thinking about that. Somebody asked me the other day, like, when's the last time you went fishing? I was like, too long ago, man.
Yeah.
It's been too
Man,
long.
I think about what you just said. I was talking to a guy the other day. We're trying to plan a group camping trip, and a lot of times people they don't do these things because of the hassle, you
Hmm.
know. And what you're doing is helping to remove some of the hassle from adventure.
Yeah.
And man, that's really cool. Where did this love of the outdoors come from?
God, that's a great question. My dad wasn't really around. I'd see him during the summer a little bit. And so I didn't necessarily have that kind of dragging me out to the woods and inspiring that piece of it, but there was just something in my belly that yearned for it, and
Mhm.
I remember being in high school and like wanting it so bad. I think a freshman or a sophomore or something, and I went to Academy and bought they were like an LL Bean boot, rubber on the bottom, but camouflage sort of canvas on top,
Oh yeah.
but that duck boot style. And uh, I was wearing them like it was kind of cold outside, and I thought these would be great for mushy stuff or whatever. And people were like, "Oh, those are your duck hunting boots?" I was like, like I'd never been duck hunting before, but like I wanted it so bad. I was like, maybe if I say that they are, somebody will be like, oh, cool, we duck hunt. You should come with us,
Yeah.
or whatever, which isn't the right way to do it. But that was, I think that's what my logic was at the time. But man, when I was a junior, I became buddies with a guy, and his dad loved to hunt. And they had a place in South Texas, and they started taking me down there. And I shot my first hog with them. I shot my first doe with them, and like just learned about not only just putting a bullet in something and cutting the meat and putting it on the grill and that piece of it, but the community was
Mm.
really my favorite part. We were we were maybe in college on this trip in this instance, and we're down there and we're all sitting around the fire at the camp house, and one of the families or the lease members drives up, and he's an older guy, so it's his son who's a grown man, and so his kids get out, and his kids are maybe 10 or and 8 or something like that, and they jump out, and they're kind of in front of the fire, and they're like, "Oh, Grandpa, this place is great. Do you have a TV and video games here?" And
Mm.
the grandfather points to the fire and he says, "Hey boys, see that right there? That there is South Texas television. That's all we got." And I was like, "Man, this is amazing!" Like that experience and getting kids and even adults like myself at the time out into that spot removes all the distraction and really helps you refocus and realize that like there's more entertainment sitting in front of a TV, And
Mm.
so we joke sometimes like nobody ever said, "I wish I'd spent more time on the sofa." Uh, and so when I took this idea of something that was solving my own problem and told my wife, "Hey, I want to make this available to other people," it was like, there's more about it than just trying to turn a dollar on it. Like, how do we encourage and inspire people to get off the sofa and to overcome those hurdles that keep you from maybe pushing out for that trip? And how do you inspire the next generation to where they jump out of the car and instead of asking for a TV, on the fifth trip or something, they already know what the program is. They're gathering kindling and they're
Yep.
like, "Man, we know what this is about.
Yep.
We're roasting mallows tonight, baby."
I introduced my kids into whittling this last camping trip we were on, and I'm just
Yes.
trying. I was, very safely. First
Mm-hmm.
time I was whittling, I cut my thumb.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
That's a
yeah.
whole story. But just teaching them how to be careful and shave it down. My son was like, "What if these were arrows?" And we were
Yeah.
had to fight for our food. And I'm like, "There
Yeah.
you go, man. You're getting it."
That's it.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. What are some of these hobbies that that have stuck with you that rejuvenate you, Kansas?
Gosh, I mean, uh, kind of like I said, really just being out in the community around a fire is really where it's at for me now. But I like to do it solo too. I mean, I when I'm on these road trips sometimes for trade shows, I don't like to stay in hotels. I like to find a campsite, which is kind of funny because you're road choring it for a week or two. But for me, I'm like, this is fun. If I'm out here, I'm not going to go into a Holiday Inn or a La Quina or something like and listen to people slam doors. I'm going to sit out under the stars with some fires. And like, I remember being in Joshua Tree. It was kind of a layover between meeting some dealers a few years ago, and I just had a cot and a sleeping bag out underneath the stars, and I was like, this is it, man. I had a bottle of wine, every night I'd grill a steak and drink some wine. And I had this kangaroo rat that was eating my shoelaces at night, and he and I started a relationship, It's hey, buddy, come on.
Got a steak on
And
there for you, pal.
yeah, but like just looking up at night, laying in that bag, no tent, and looking at the stars and watching the satellites cross over the
Hmm.
sky and shooting stars and watching, Jupiter start to light up and rise in the sky and these you just realize how insignificant some of the dumb problems are that we fret about on a daily
Mm,
basis.
Man.
And so that's really what I love. And I do love to be alone because for me, I am more of an introvert and less of an extrovert. I'm a forced extrovert. I've had to learn to hang with people and not get totally depleted by that. But I love it alone. But really, my thing now is just making sure my kids are out. My oldest is about to go to college, and she and I went on a big 10 or 14 day road trip last summer, and we drove to Zion. We stayed in. We just camped. We hiked Angel, not Angel Fire,
Angel's Landing.
Angel's Landing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. We
Nice.
did Angel's Landing. We did some canyoneering. We fly fished Fish Lake, which is apparently like the highest lake in Utah,
Hmm.
and she caught her first trout. Basically just making sure they're introduced to all those things and giving them the confidence to get
Man.
outside and go do it as they leave the house. And my oldest is 18 and my youngest is 8. And my youngest, she's like, I'm ready to shoot a deer this year. I'm like, all right, let's
All
start
right.
working towards it. And so just introducing those skills, really, that's for me, that's the biggest thing at this point. Is like it's more about me guiding my kids and introducing them to all the different things, making sure they have all the skills. Uh, like even backpacking. I mean, because we car camp so much because of Pakmule and all that stuff that I realized I hadn't gone back like proper backpacking in a long time. And my daughter and I went and hiked. My 16-year-old and I went and hiked rim to rim Grand Canyon a
Oh
year and a
man.
half ago,
Hmm.
That's
and with all
awesome.
our stuff on our back, and like fighting through tears and pain and this 20 something mile hike where you're hiking down like 6,000 feet or 7,000 feet, and then you hike up 5,000 the other side. I mean, it's a
Mm,
huge bust. And what it's like to like own the pain and know that you can push through it and get to the end and the accomplishment and the tears that happen when you finish and all those sorts of things. Of course, they apply across a broad spectrum of uh, things that you'll experience in your life, work and family, and all those things.
yeah, and it's cool seeing kids do that too,
Hmm.
just to
Yeah,
see them discover what they're actually capable of and
yeah, for sure.
experience those new things. Man, that's just as much fun, to me at this
Yeah,
point as catching a huge fish is like seeing them catch something and seeing them
yeah,
light up and go for the first time they've experienced this is
yeah,
so much joy.
yeah. My son and I are fishing this tournament. I've, I've when I say a tournament, like I'm a low tournament guy. For me, it's more. than excuse to go out and fish and be with a bunch of buddies. And
Yeah.
so I fished with some different partners over the years, but my son's 14 and he's a big kid now. He's basically my size, and I'm like, good, you can pull this boat now.
Yeah.
We're a
Put him to
team.
work.
Like, let's go do it. And I don't care about placing anything. I just want to get him to start catching on a fly some redfish, and working the skills and learning those details. I mean, all that stuff I didn't really start learning until 8 or so years ago, and so man, if he can start at 14 and get fired up about it. So he's been going down to the river here in town and like practicing his casts and stuff. He's getting jazzed up about it. It's going to be
That's
fun.
awesome.
Oh, that's awesome.
Where will that be?
Down on the coast of Texas, Port O'Connor, between Port Aransas and Port O'Connor is kind of the
Man,
boundary border.
I'd love to bring my skiff over there and fish there.
Yeah, you got to, man. I'll go out with you. I'll show you where to run.
It'd be fun. I watched that. It was a Meat Eater episode that had JT Van Zandt on there,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
man, I was
JT's a
like,
good
gosh,
dude.
I want to get down there and fish that. That'd be so much fun.
Yeah, it's a good spot, man. It's a lot different than the rest of the Gulf Coast. The Texas coast is shallow, so shallow. I bought a Florida skiff, was one of my first ones, and I was like, why is this lower unit so far below the bottom of the boat? I mean, it's not even in the tunnel. This boat doesn't even make sense. Why did they set it up this way? And then I realized, like, Florida water is a foot and a half deep pretty much everywhere.
Yeah,
We are literally getting into beer can deep water when we're chasing these redfish and like
Wow.
yeah,
pushing the boat across the bottom.
yep.
It's a
Gosh, that's
different
amazing.
style. Yeah, different style.
All right, so tell me about your title, head adventurer. I love that. I wish that was my title, but that was, that they don't really need that in higher education. So
That's true. Yeah, maybe they do. Maybe
maybe
that's
they
what
do.
they
Maybe
think.
that's where should start heading.
Yeah, yeah, man. When you first start out, it's like you're just trying to sell some racks. Like, you
Yeah.
can't. You're not the president of anything.
CEO
Like that.
of one.
Yeah, it's a dumb title to apply. People do it all the time, but
The
for me, I was
assistant
like,
to the regional manager.
yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. And it's really like I'm trying to inspire within our company to go out and do these things, and within our
Mm.
community and our people and our customers and all those things to go do it. And so, like, if I'm not doing it, I'm not leading by example. And I do remind my team all the time. It's not lost on me that my work play balance is still out of whack. I still work too much, but like the mantra "work hard, play hard" does resonate. You gotta come home exhausted and turn that switch. And the kids, for me, are the inspiration to keep it going. Right now, that's like I've done a lot of the things, and they're all really fun. And right now, for me, it's about making sure that I'm flipping the switch for the kids, and less for myself. My adventure right now is trying to get this company, to keep uh, getting the gear dialed in right. And we've got a bunch of products we're trying to launch this year, and all the moving parts. It's like you're just managing chaos, right?
Mm.
It's like
Yeah,
a bunch of spinning wheels. I tell people a lot of times that people go, "Oh, it's so cool you started this business. It must be so awesome," and like to feel that or whatever. And I'm like, I guess. I mean, all I've been doing is taking one action after the next. Like, what if I do this and then I'll try this and do these different things. At this point, I just feel like I'm running down the jetties barefoot, holding a couple glass balls in my hand, hoping I don't trip and drop them. You know, Flipping a crevice, that I can't
oh,
see.
it's amazing
Got my foot
visual.
on a barnacle and fall over.
And watch the
Uh,
glass shatter.
yeah, yeah.
Oh
So,
man, that
but
makes me
yeah,
think.
it's also a good reminder to me that like I gotta keep doing it, keep getting
Yeah.
after it.
That's such a good reminder of leading by example. You know,
Mm,
you're leading. You're not a boss. You're a
yeah,
leader.
yeah,
Yeah, I like that. As a friend of mine says, what our leaders do in moderation, followers do in excess.
yeah.
And so as you lead with that example, you're the people that follow you and work with you. They're gonna take that to next level. And so
That's awesome. I haven't heard that. I love it.
And so I really like that. I mean, there's the culture of adventure versus, just business president is so much of a better attitude to have.
Yeah.
So I would much rather personally work for a boss that calls himself a head adventurer than a CEO.
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw you guys. One of the things I like about what you guys do is a large percentage of the material you guys use is a recycled material. Can you talk about some of that, sort of minutia of the manufacturing side of Pakmule? I find that really interesting.
Yeah, man, it's real important to me. I want people to get outside, uh, and I want there to be an outside to go to, right? And
Yeah,
I've read some old environmental books, first along the river about all the pollution stuff that was happening, and these old timers that were out there trying to pass on this tradition and being like, where did all the fish go? And why is the water a different color? And even duck hunting down on the coast, these guys like, man, we used to come down here and there were so many ducks, like it would cover the sky every season, every day. And now at the coast, it's you don't see the ducks down there as much.
yeah,
And so, it's people call it uh a little bit of an oxymoron that the hunters are the conservationists. Like, why do you just want to provide habitat so you can kill the animal? And I'm like, well, we also understand the importance of numbers and the volume of wildlife that exists and how much is good for balance. But we recognize that when those numbers decline, there's something off in the ecosystem.
Mhm.
Everything's required to be there for balance. And in the old days, when the West was getting pushed and developed, and market hunters were out there, they were just hammering everything because they'd see herds of buffalo and all these ducks, and they thought that it's forever. We could never outshoot these things. They didn't understand reproduction times and the habitat and all the stuff that the amount of centuries probably that it took to develop those massive flocks and those massive
yeah,
herds. And so we understand that now, and we realize that without balance, it starts to fall apart, and that doesn't just affect the wildlife's habitat; it affects us too. It affects our food and how, there's a lot of conversation about bees and pollination and what happens if the bees go away and why are the bees going away. Nobody's hunting bees, but like I've been telling my kids since they were little, like when a bee comes to fly around you, you don't need to swat at it and get nervous. He's not coming at you like, man, I'm about to stick my stinger in you. You know, he's like, oh, look, I'm gonna take a rest here. Or this person's got a bright colored shirt on. I'm gonna see if there's some nectar or pollen in there that I can get.
Mm.
Because if they sting you, they die. They're not out to just sting you. A bee,
right.
that's its last defense. And but without us understanding any of that, we have no appreciation to care for it or to protect it. And so that's my long intro into into the aluminum piece of
I
it. But
love
like,
it.
it's it's an important aspect of what we're doing. And so I really do care about how it is that we build these things. We run a bunch of ads, obviously, and people are like, "Oh man, I could buy that Harbor Freight one for $100." And I'm like, "Look,
Yeah,
you can, and there's a place for that probably. If it's a one and done, you need it real quick to throw, I don't know, something on there. But it's like you can't say that all hitch racks should cost $100. It's like saying that a Honda Civic's going to do the same thing a Dodge Dually is going to do. Sure, they'll both get you from point A to B, but like the person that needs to haul a cattle trailer isn't going to buy a Honda Civic. And the person that just needs to commute to work and go to the grocery store is not going to buy a dually. You know, the reason for the construction and the cost and the size and all those things differentiates the purpose of the product.
Mm.
And so our product is significantly bigger, significantly stronger. One thing that's really interesting when I got into this is that like there is no testing standard that's required. And so when you see a bunch of these racks out there and they're always leaning and they're frowning, that everybody goes, well, it says it has a 500-pound capacity. I'm like, Go put 300 pounds on it and drive down the street and tell me how your gut feels when you're doing that. Does it feel okay, or does it feel like, ooh, that doesn't feel so good? And so we over engineer and over test everything. Just we want to know that we had a customer who did this. I mean, it was like the perfect conversation this June, but like when you go on a big hunt or a big trip, that our product is not going to be the piece that fails that suffered trip. Yeah,
Mm.
and this customer came to a trade show. He's like, man, I drove all the way to Nova Scotia and I was hunting. We had a moose permit and we had the pack mule and the big Yeti, either the 250 or the 350 on the back. And he said, I was successful. It was super. I was so excited. We harvested a moose. We quartered it all up and like totally stuffed that cooler. He's like, it was
Freaking
600
moose.
pounds. Yeah.
Oh
Like it was
gosh.
600 pounds of meat, just a beast. And we had it on the back of the pack mule. And I drove that like 3,000 miles or something from Nova Scotia all the way back to Texas. And I never was concerned or worried that having 700 pounds of stuff on the back was going to be a problem, and that's where
Wow.
we've
That-
also heard the counter. We've heard of people that have gone
yeah.
elk hunting and had the other thing. And they're like, I mean, one of the stories, the guy's like, we had the cooler, we had straps around the basket and all that stuff. And then we're driving back at night and all of a sudden we see sparks and the tongue had just failed.
Hmm.
And it was barely hanging on and we were dragging that thing and the cooler down the highway at 70 miles an hour. And we pulled
Uh,
over. Now we're trying to figure out, well, now we can't do this. Where do we put this cooler full of elk meat? So now you're in the middle of the night trying to
Oh,
solve a problem you shouldn't have to solve. They ended up just dropping the tailgate and strapping the cooler on the dropped tailgate until they could get to a place where they could try to reconvene. It's just
wow.
it's just crazy.
hmm.
And there's a safety component too. We want people to know that like it's not going to end up in somebody's windshield. But so all those things are important to us. And so the aluminum aspect of it's really interesting. Aluminum's an infinitely recyclable material. And so all of our shapes are extruded. It's like the Play-Doh press. You put in a bunch of Play-Doh and you squeeze down the lever, and out comes a shape of aluminum on the other side. And so
Wow.
uh, all these huge piles of scrap aluminum are brought in, and they get melted down. It gets poured into a billet, and then they press that billet into new shapes. And so even when we're prototyping, we'll bring truckloads of aluminum back to the extrusion plant, and we got film of them throwing it all into the furnace, and you see these pack mules and these different carriers and all these configurations, and they slowly melt and they become another pack mule. It's incredible.
Wow. That's super cool.
And I love it. And so we sort of joke and say, like, drink more beer so we can make more pack mules.
That's
Start
a
sending
great.
you.
You should have that as your advertisement there.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
need material. You guys get to
That's
drink.
right. But it's important, and you look at the amount of stuff that we throw in the trash every day, and both food and material, even our packaging, like we don't we have very, very little plastic inside of it. And we would get customers in the beginning that would be like, man, I got like the cardboard rubbed a black spot on my aluminum during shipping, or I got a nick or something.
Yeah.
And we're like, yeah, but like otherwise the size of the plastic bag would be like 24 square feet of plastic just to keep it from getting a scratch on it, so you can put it in your hitch and then go get a scratch on it. And so we finally just started attaching a card that says, hey, look, we use as little plastic and packaging as possible. Yeah, you might get a scratch or a nick or something, but consider it one of many that you're going to build on your adventures, and know that like you're reducing the amount of waste that's happening.
Mm.
We could put a huge piece of plastic, but why should we do that? There's so much conversation about plastic in the oceans and all these things, and if it's unnecessary, like you just reset the expectation. Everything's over packaged because people want it a certain way. And I do also understand you spend $695 on a product, you want it to show up looking nice, and it does show up looking nice. But like you get ticky tacky on a nick or a rub mark,
Yeah.
like maybe we're not the right product for you.
Well, yeah, I think I love that that's so intentional, you know. It's not like you're just trying to cut corners.
Yeah,
It's like there's a reason behind it.
yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, Shifting gears just a second, is there a we talk about these adventures, elk hunting and moose hunting and all these things. Is there an adventure that you can point to that shaped you personally?
Hmm. Uh, Gosh, I don't know. I would have to go back to uh, Charlie Parker, my friend's dad. He was like a second father figure. I mean, he was my father figure.
Mm.
He even when we were in college, my buddy was playing lacrosse for the University of Texas during the fall hunting season, and so he was usually tied up, and Charlie would be like, "Hey, I'm going to the lease. You want to go?" Like, "Yes, sir. I'll jump in with you. Let's go do it." And and I love that. And so, I mean, shooting that first hog and shooting that first doe and learning how to skin it and do all those things, those are those core memories you can't get out of your mind. But also they had some property in Colorado, and one summer during college, a couple of my other buddies, or one of my other buddies and I. Went up with Bronson to go live up there for a month, and we were helping clear trails for their horses and all this stuff. And we were mostly in the national forest, clearing trails and cutting logs and moving all this stuff around. And so we'd work for half a day or something like that, and we'd knock off in the afternoon and go do something. And Seth was my other buddy who was up there, and Bronson is my other good buddy whose property it was. And Seth he was this big outdoor adventure guy, like really wanted to ice climb and mountaineer. And he went and did a Knowles thing for a month, and he went to the University of Denver and or University of Colorado in Denver, or whichever one it is, and had like really gotten fired up about all that stuff. And so we started hiking up into the mountains and camping out above the tree line, which was super fun. It was my first time to ever do any of that stuff. And then one morning we were like, let's go to the very top. And it was like a 12.5 or something. It wasn't crazy, but it was kind of crazy because we were just in shorts and shoes, like, let's go do it. And I remember standing on the top and just looking around at the mountain peaks as far as you could see everywhere around us. We were in the southwestern part of Colorado, kind of outside of Ouray, and it's just a gorgeous place. They call it Little Switzerland. And we were there for like 15 or 20 minutes, and then you could see some storm clouds rolling in. And Seth was like, "We got a boogie, buddy. You get to experience this for a few minutes. That's it. You do all this work, you get to the mountaintop just for a short window of time to pull it in, and then it's back to work, and you got to go down." And and we're like hustling down this thing, and all this hail starts coming in, and we get on this emergency
Oh,
blanket, and we're like riding this. We're like sledding down the snow on the side of this mountain in his emergency blanket to get back down to camp. And it was a wild time, but that that moment is so true. And I've since read a lot of mountaineering books, including Joe Simpson's Touching the Void, and which is about survival in the mountains and what happens when something goes wrong. But it's true in our life. Like, we work hard, work hard, work hard, work hard. We get a moment of clarity and a moment of peace,
Mm.
and that's that rejuvenation piece. And then you got to get right back to work. And there's too many people. I feel like the people are always like, man, I just can't wait to win the lotto, or I can't wait to do, once I finish this one thing, everything will be fine. And I don't think that's what our life is supposed to be. I don't think that's what we can ever expect it to be. And somehow people are starting to create an expectation that that's a goal. And I think that sets up people for disappointment and frustration and depression and all
mm,
these things, because the toil is the standard. It's
Mm.
what always will be and has to be. Those moments, those mountaintop moments, though, are the pieces that give us the inspiration and the refuel to keep going after it. It's that you weren't born to just toil and pay bills and die. You got to go to the mountaintop. Otherwise, if you're just working to pay those bills, you're like, man, this sucks. Why am I doing this?
Yeah, that's a unfulfilling life if you're just working to pay the bills.
Yeah,
We're
yeah, for
meant for
sure.
more than that.
I
Yeah.
think about a friend of mine. Um, he talked about when he was younger. They were at this camp, and it was somewhere. I want to say it was up in close to Asheville, North Carolina, and they went on this hike, and it was at night, and so it was go. And they went up to this peak at nighttime just to get this, unencumbered like view of the sky where there's no light
Mm.
pollution or anything, and it was beautiful, and it was, he said it was an incredible hike, and but he looked around, he realized there were no lights on up there,
Wow.
that all the lights were down in the valley, and he's
That's
like, man,
incredible.
you don't you don't live here. No one lives up here.
Yeah.
There's no water up here.
Yeah.
There's no electricity run. I mean, there's nothing. There's no utility up here on the mountain top. It's you
Yeah.
come and look, and then you got to go back down.
That's right.
No one lives there. It's there for perspective. It's there for appreciation.
Mm.
But that's not where you live.
Yeah. That's right.
It's such a truth.
It is. Yeah. That's awesome.
Pac Mule's passionate. You spoken a little earlier about it. But I want to press into keeping wild places wild and where they can continue to thrive. Can you talk about some of the ways you guys are investing to keep wild places wild?
Yeah. I mean, the most palatable is just encouraging, inspiring people to get out there because it's the people in long term that are really able to do the most work. If people get out there and they love it, they're going to care to work at it and take care of it. And, one person or one company can never do enough. Like Patagonia is the biggest example of a company that's focused on the outdoors. But I would venture to say that the customers and the followers of Patagonia are doing more for the wildlife than Patagonia is.
Hmm.
Patagonia is able to be the voice to create the inspiration. The people are able to do the work, and that multiplier is important.
Yeah,
And so to me, I feel like that's our biggest impact. That the secondary impact of it is really we have a lot of different companies that uh, uh, like Ducks Unlimited and CCA and these different um, nonprofits that are doing a bunch of work to restore marshlands and to restore the coasts. And we worked really hard with CCA to protect some old oyster areas that were
yeah,
just getting decimated, and protect those spaces. And so, right now, we donate product to a lot of their different auctions and fundraisers, and Texas Wildlife Association is another one. When they're doing different fundraisers, we offer a product to be able to donate. And then we do a little bit of cash also. We don't have enough. We're still a young business, so we don't have a bunch of cash to do stuff. But
yeah.
we recently donated to Comel Trails Alliance, just to continue to help build trails within our community, for people to be able to hike and bike and do all those things and continue that effort. So there's kind of three different ways that we're working to
That's great.
ensure that there are great places for the future. And then of course our fabrication processes would be kind of a fourth way to do that, just ensuring that we're not polluting or we're not doing more or pulling more resources than are necessary to create our product. Um, I think it's interesting too on that aspect of it, the fabrication piece, that a lot of people will talk about uh, they love the environment and they do all this stuff. They buy a bunch of stuff from China or somewhere, and people will say like, I wish we could still build stuff in the US and it wouldn't cost so much. And I'm like, well, if you go over there, like an industrial part of China is not too distant than like 1800s London. The
Hmm.
sky and the pollution level is pretty crazy because they don't have all the EPA regulations and the protection things that we've got in place here in the States that cause it to be cleaner. We enact a lot of things here in the US to protect the environment and to ensure we're doing things better and higher quality. And then we buy all this stuff from countries that don't. And they're
Mm,
the ones pumping out all the stuff. And I'm like, you know, I'm sure you guys have experienced a Saharan dust storm, that's darkened the skyline of Alabama at some point. You're
yeah.
like, what? What's all this haze? And then you read in the paper that like a big Saharan dust storm stirred up and it crossed the Atlantic somehow, and now it's affecting your air quality. And you're like, how's that? That's crazy. Well, that's proof that we all share the same air. So if
Yeah.
another country's doing it bad and we're supporting that cause, we're
Hmm.
still breathing that same air.
Yeah, that's
It
right.
impacts the planet. And so, you kind of put your money where your mouth is if you really believe that we need American manufacturing and we want a better, cleaner environment. You got to support the companies that are doing that.
Mm.
Yeah, man, I love what you guys are doing, and man, I like you guys often talk about was that classic saying, and I love it: buy once, cry once.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, it really is true,
yeah,
and I love that. So
yep, yeah. I mean,
super
my
cool.
first duck hunt, I was it was with Charlie Parker, and he's like, "Come on down, we're going duck hunting." And I'm in college, and so I stop at a store and I buy the cheapest pair of like PVC boot waders that I can find because I'm in college. And we're on the boat, and I'm bundled up, and I'm comfortable, I'm sort of fine, and you're young and strapping, you got enough piss and vinegar inside of you to keep you warm. And then we start humping these decoys across the marsh. My feet are pulling out of my boots, and like I'm really working up a sweat. And by the time we're done, with a few trips back and forth and knee deep mud, and you're pulling your legs out, I'm sweating, and I'm starting to pull off sweaters and stuff. I'm like, "Ooh, man, I'm I'm uh
That's
I'm
hard
warm."
work.
Yeah. And about 15 minutes later, I'm so covered in sweat and all that sweat's getting cold now that I'm starting to shiver, and I got all my stuff back on, but I'm like, I can't get warm to save my life. And all I can think about is, man, I wish that I was in a hot shower drinking a cup of coffee right now. I don't even care if the ducks come decoy. It's my first duck hunt, and I don't even care about it now because the equipment failed me. I didn't have a breathable wader that allowed that heat and that moisture to get out. I had long johns on. It was moving that layer, but after that, nothing was going away. I was just all encumbered in this humidity chamber I had created with these PVC waders, and it just ruined the whole trip for me.
Hmm.
And that's true about all products. And now I've got a pair of good Sims waders. I've had them for a long time, and I can be in a torrential downpour in a river, looking at a ripple and casting the line, and like all I'm focused on is the ripple and where that fly is going to land because I'm comfortable and I'm protected and I'm
Hmm.
dry. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. And that's what we try to build is gear that supports you to go do those things, and so that you don't have that moment where one piece of gear ruined your whole trip.
I love that.
Yeah, I did. I hunted duck hunter for the first time this past season with some guys from they're from my church, and they're like, man, you need to go with us. You need to go with us. And finally, I was like, all right, I'll go. It's the same thing. Like I didn't use my trout waders. I just got me some cheaper like you said PVC waders or whatever.
Yeah.
They worked, but I was like I didn't want to jump in if I didn't enjoy it. And I knew if I was
Yeah.
going to enjoy it, then I'll jump in later. So I'll probably end up getting me some nicer duck hunting waders, but that we'll see if we can get one more season out of these without some leaks.
Mhm. One of the
There you go.
questions we like to ask each of our guests is, what's your next adventure?
Well, that fly fishing trip with my son that's coming up, I'm pretty excited about.
That's going to
Uh,
be amazing.
it's going to be really fun because we'll get down there for a day, get everything set up. We'll do some scouting and pre-fishing for a day, and then we'll fish hard for 2 days and introduce him to a bunch of buddies. Some of them he already knows these guys. He's grown up around, and some of them are new folks. And so that's going to be fun and exciting. I'm pretty fired up about that.
Awesome.
Uh, that's the next big one. And then to steal from one of my customers, the next adventure after that is dropping my daughter off at college.
That'll be an adventure for sure.
No
Yeah,
doubt.
yeah.
Yeah. What you sort of hinted at it, and I don't know what you can or can't say, but what are some new things coming for Pakmule?
Yeah, I mean, we're really focused on the hitch right now. We've recently launched the Scout in a powder coated black, which has been awesome. Like people just love it.
Hmm.
I originally did it no paint because I was like, well, if there's no paint, there's nothing to scratch off, there's nothing to wear. It's not going to look like it got shotgunned if you've been driving down Cleachy roads for 6 months. It'll still look good, and paint's just one other thing to maintain. But people love the color, and I gotta admit, it looks great. It really
It
looks
does
great.
look good.
And so that's been real hot. And then we've launched a couple riser options. So now, I mean, we somebody posted a review on YouTube the other day that I saw, and he was fired up because with the Scout, this was our intention. But I loved hearing somebody say it. He had a straight tongue on the back of his Gladiator, but he's like, I'm going to buy that 7-inch riser because his girlfriend has a RAV4 and it's got a really low hitch. And so he's like, if we take her car, I can spend 15 minutes and I can change out the hitch, and now it can be raised up so we don't drag down the highway.
Yeah.
And so that's just added a lot of universal uh, opportunity for people, where they don't feel like they buy something that's stuck. Now the Scout can adapt to all of the different things that they're doing as their life changes and the vehicles change and all that sort of thing. And so that's been really good. We're working on a moto rack that we should be launching here in the next 6 or 8 weeks for hauling dirt bikes and e-bikes and all that sort of stuff.
Wow.
And I'm really fired up about that. My son and I've got a couple dirt bikes, and I've hauled them in the back of pickup trucks, and I've tried other moto racks. And finally, I was like, I got to figure this out. And we've been 3 years working on trying to get it right. I mean, it's been a long process. It's going to be awesome. I'm really fired up about that. And then working on some other anti-wobble stuff, uh, kind of allow our patented locking anti-wobble system to work on any hollow shafted accessory. So hopefully toe balls and stuff will be able to lock those in place and keep them from chattering while you're driving down the highway, which would be big.
That's
Those are
awesome.
kind of the nearest things that are coming out. We got a
That's
laundry
incredible.
list of other stuff that we're working on, but a lot further down the road.
How can
That's
people
incredible.
find more about Pack Mule?
Yeah, pakmule.com, Instagram or Facebook. We're at the same handle. I think technically Facebook's Pack Mule Gear, but if you type in PAKMULE, you'll find us. There's a bunch of videos on YouTube and stuff as well, both on our channel or that other people have posted and reviewed. Or give us a call. We pride ourselves in our customer service too. We can't answer the phone all the time because we're either in the warehouse or in a meeting or doing something. But our goal is to call people back within 24 hours and make sure they get all the answers. And we love it. People call us and they're like, "Hey, I got this vehicle. I'm going on this trip to Alaska. I want to do this, haul this, and tell us their whole story." And so we get to live kind of vicariously through some of our
Oh, that's
customers too.
cool.
They also inspire us, which is fun, and we help make sure they have decided on the right rack and get it shipped to them. It's pretty fun. So also call us at the shop.
That's another thing you don't get from when you're buying stuff from China.
Yeah,
You don't get that deeper connection, and man, that's just as that's worth it. That's part of the
yeah,
Yeah.
cost. Of
yeah,
what you're buying when you spend the money on that is you're getting that customer service like that, and that's really cool. I mean, I love that kind of
yeah,
thing. So
yeah.
very
Hunter,
nice.
who does our marketing, tells people, he's like, "Hey, listen, you can you can buy a rack that's a lot less expensive from people in China that don't even use these things because most of them are driving motorcycles anyways. They have no idea, and really that's true. I mean, people say like, oh, what's the difference in your hitch rack and all the others? And the reality is that we use them.
Mm.
We have put them in the field. We have designed it in a way that makes it as universal and intuitive as possible. We weren't shooting for a dollar. And I think all the other companies out there were hitch or hitch accessory type companies. They probably told a junior designer, "Hey, we need one of those cargo baskets for the hitch. Looks like most people are selling them for 150 bucks. So let's make sure we can design it to where it fits that MSRP." And that's why they're all about the same size and they all look about the same, is because when you're shooting for $1, you're not designing the product properly.
Mm.
You're designing it totally wrong. And you have to design it for function first and then try to figure out how to pull down the price and manufacture it in a way that, doesn't is at least as plausible to sell to folks as possible. And so I understand as well as anyone, we have an expensive product, $695 it's a big check to write. But I also recognize that a lot of people, it's what you need. And if you need a good quality carrier, $695 is not an expensive product. I mean, we have shotguns that are $2,100 to go shoot ducks with, and we have jackets that are $450 that we wear a couple times during the season, and we have a ski jacket then that's the same thing, and you've got a pair of hiking boots that's $325, and you hike a few times a year. And so like good products cost money, and we end up buying things that we believe will improve the experience. And the market had set the standard that a hitch rack should cost $150. And so we're trying to overcome that and let people know, like, should you really cantilever 500 pounds off the back of your vehicle with one piece of steel or whatever it is that those companies are using?
That ain't hauling no moose.
Expect it to be fine driving 80 miles an hour down the highway? Like, I don't know if that's where you should be going chinchy on your spend,
Yeah, I mean, I bought an expensive bike rack that holds 4 bikes on the back of my car, and I don't think twice about it because I know my bikes aren't going anywhere. The metal's good, and it's just not. It's not gonna. But yeah, I mean, you had to pay for it, but it's peace of mind. I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah,
that's the other thing I love about what you guys do is you those are bike racks too. They don't just hold ice chests, but you can attach a bike rack setup to them. It's pretty sweet.
Cool. That's awesome.
Oh, he froze up on us.
Oh, there first.
Oh man. There he is.
Did I lose you? There we go.
We lost you for a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying, Brian was talking about his bike rack. That's one of the other accessory pieces that I love about what you guys do. It's not just something to haul your ice chest, but you can rig it up to haul bikes too. And it's like, man, like a Swiss Army knife of carriers. You can do lots of different things with it. And it's not just a one-trick pony.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, we just found that we would go camping and we wanted to bring mountain bikes sometimes, and like, you got one hitch, so how can you haul bikes and all the rest of this stuff on here? So it's not necessarily the right piece of equipment if you're just trying to haul a bike to the trail every morning to go get your workout in or something. It's not that quick and fast. But people go, oh, I don't want to take the front wheel off. And we did a video where I mounted 2 bikes with 2 different wheel types. I took the front wheel off, fully mounted them in like 75 seconds or something. I'm like, it's not really that difficult.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Man, this has been a great conversation, Kansas. Man, I really appreciate you joining us
guys.
and sharing your story. What a cool company right here and right here at home, and making a great product and a great story and a great attitude and mentality in what you're making and why you're making it too. That makes it all the better, and you use a lot of key words that really, make our hearts sing, that you guys are trying to inspire people and encourage people to get outside. And similarly with this podcast, we're hoping to encourage people and inspire people to get into the storied outdoors, to write and share stories around campfires, and outside in the place that we love to call the storied outdoors.
Yeah, that's great. Brad, I sure appreciate it, man. Brian, thanks for the invite. And I'm really honored to be hosted here and be able to tell our story and chat with you guys. It's been fun.
It's our pleasure, man.